History Project. Interview number 6, I'm talking with Mr. Joe Freadlin at his home in Winchester, Indiana, March 5th, 1979. Mr. Freadlin, I wonder if you could begin by telling us a little bit about your parents. During our preliminary conversation, I know that you indicated that they were both from the old country. Could you tell me a bit about how they happened to come to America, where they went once they got here, how they happened to meet, get married, and so forth?
Both my parents, from the stories I can recollect and remember being told, immigrated when they were both very young. My father at the age of 15 and my mother at the age of 12. My father came from Russia and my mother came from Austria. After passing through Ellis Island, they both ended up in Rochester, New York, where they had family. As was customary during that period, they immediately obtained employment to earn money so they could send this for passage for the balance or the other members of their family. In their teens they met and fell in love and were married and raised a family where I, one of 3 children, was born in Rochester, New York.
What was your father doing? What was his occupation?
My father's occupation was tailoring for Hickey Freedman Company in Rochester, New York, until World War II broke out. And then he went in as a civilian employee with the Navy. And he ended up in Pensacola, Florida, where he worked until his retirement.
Is he living in Florida currently?
He currently lives in, no, he did live in Florida for 10 years. And then because of health, he moved to Atlanta with my sister. And now is in the home for the Jewish aged in Atlanta, Florida, with my mother.
Was your mother also working in the garment industry in Rochester?
Up till the time that she was married. Once they were married and raised the children, my mother never went back to work.
Which was customary in Jewish families.
It was a customary thing, right.
Did your father come to this country with that skill? I noticed that you mentioned he was a young lad. Did he learn tailoring in the old country, or did he learn it here?
From what I can recollect, I believe he learned it here.
Did he ever speak of any particular adjustment problems living in Rochester?
No, because to the best of my knowledge, Rochester had a pretty large Jewish community, and they fitted in very easily. And I think it was a clothing center at that time for the garment business, other than New York City, particularly men's clothing, and jobs were easily available, from what information I can remember now.
As a young boy living in Rochester, then, what kinds of jobs did you have?
I had a number of jobs, particularly paper routes. I recall that. I had a paper route all through high school, and I worked at various fountains. In those days, they had fountains and
soda fountains.
And soda fountains.
My students don't know what a soda fountain is.
And that's about all, yeah.
How important would you say that the work ethic was in your family?
Extremely important. I know my sister, all through high school, she was a cashier at the local theater. We all learned very early in life to save money, particularly for education. And she became a graduate nurse. And my younger sister worked, and so she could go to a RBI. They had it was like secondary college for typist secretarial work.
This was in Rochester?
In Rochester.
Well, you mentioned education. Of course, that's also a traditional path of mobility for immigrants. Was that also very important in your family?
Very important. it was stressed to get as much education as we could possibly get on the basis of what we could afford. And there wasn't plentiful of money in those days. I recall that we were of a, not poor, but we were certainly not well off. I recall my early days.
How did you happen to get to this part of the country?
I was interested in a economic education, and a couple of my buddies and I applied to various schools. And I did have the opportunity. I was accepted to Syracuse because an aunt lived there, and I was going to go there. But with these other two buddies being accepted, we all decided, having never been further than 100 miles from Rochester, to go west. And we all ended up, two of us in Illinois and one of us in Wisconsin. And we liked the school and just stayed on here.
So you went to the University of Illinois, and that's where you met your wife. Could you tell us just a bit about her background? I know it's very important as far as this community is concerned.
Well, she was born in Elwood, Indiana, and her father and mother moved to Winchester, Indiana, when she was 5 years old for the purposes of starting their own business, which she did approximately 1923, and she went through kindergarten, primary, and high school, and then on to the university. So she has been practically a native of Winchester, as well as our daughter, who was born, the first Jewish girl to be born in Winchester, and her brother was the first Jewish boy to be born in Winchester. And our friends and all our social contacts have always been in this particular area, and we've enjoyed it. We've had, particularly during our earlier years, we made a lot of friends, and we used to, our way of enjoying was nothing to go to Richmond. We had friends in Richmond. We'd go to Muncie. We'd have friends in the community, and we were rather fortunate because we didn't belong to any particular group for any permanency. We attached ourselves with a number of people.
So you do consider yourself then, you and your wife, to be part of several communities, but certainly part of the Muncie Jewish community.
Definitely. My wife received her Jewish education, Sunday school, and her confirmation at the Muncie Temple Bethel. I received my education in Rochester, where I received also, in addition to being bar mitzvah, I was sent to a Yiddish school to learn Jewish reading and writing, if you're familiar with that, as opposed to just the bar mitzvah.
Right. What we used to call in the area where I grew up in New York City, Hebrew school.
Right.
It was not just preparation for a bar mitzvah. And the children went much younger than they would just for preparation for the bar mitzvah. What do you recall about the life here in Winchester when you first came here? I know you spoke of a couple of other Jewish families in addition to your wife's family.
Well, the other Jewish families that were here were not my contemporaries. They were my parents-in-law contemporaries. I knew them, meeting them socially and on the street, but there were no other Jewish people of our age other than her younger brothers.
What were the occupations of the Jews here? Are you familiar with the generation before yours?
The ones I knew were in the clothing business also. They had a store in town.
Were there any Jews that were involved in the community life here, or have been involved in the community life?
No, the nearest to actual community life, I was myself appointed to the school board for a 4-year period. But my father-in-law, myself, and my brother have always been active in all the social groups, such as Rotary or Kiwanis, as I still am in Union City. I've been a member of the Rotary now for almost 30-some years. We belong to the Masons, to the Elks, to the Scottish Rite, on through the whole rigmarole.
All the local clubs.
All the local clubs. We belonged on committees that affected the communities. Participated in various types of groups.
Fund drives.
Fund drives of that nature.
Right. What has been the relationship in, I would include not only Winchester but Union City here, since you have had a lot of contact with both of these eastern Indiana communities, but what has been the relationship between the Jews and the non-Jews?
It's an interesting question because that's been, I used to ask that of my father-in-law, when I first came here, being a young Jewish boy coming from a large Jewish community into a community that was actually negligible as far as Jewish people were concerned in quantity. And there really wasn't any problems or any strong relationship being a Jew or a non-Jew because there weren't too many Jews. There simply weren't very many. And there was no particular problem, I can recall. And we were treated or accepted as anyone else.
So there have not been certain avenues of the community that have been closed to you because of the fact that you're Jewish?
Not to, let me say, they were never tested. So I can't say positively they would be. There were never numbers. There was never a challenge for a Jewish person entering in any particular field or trying for anything that they would be rejected. Do I make myself
No, I think that you do, because I think when you have a very small number of people in a Jewish community and you're not trying to get individuals within the community involved in specific instances where there may be anti-Semitism.
And I can recall when I joined the Rotary Club, my father was a member, and I thought this was a nice gesture. Yet he wasn't very religious or observant, but one thing he didn't do is eat ham or bacon. And at the club, being the only Jewish men, they had known and made arrangements, and they knew it and they respected him. They would make him a special dish every week. Whenever they had ham or bacon, they'd give him something else. I myself don't participate there because I enjoy ham and bacon.
Glad we got that on the tape. So you cannot recall then specific anti-Semitic incidents of any kind that would have involved you?
Might have been when my back was turned. I never recall any.
How about when you were a young boy growing up in Rochester?
Never had any difficulty. But I must confess, my friends and my schoolmates were primarily Jewish boys and girls.
This is, of course, when you were in New York State.
Yes.
Could you tell me something about your family as far as their religious observation is concerned? Would you consider them a very religious family?
No, although we had a very strong Judaic background, we were not that orthodox or religious in the term in which you stated. We belonged to the conservative sect. There were three. We were the conservative. Now, my grandparents were very religious. My grandparents had a kosher home. My parents did not have a kosher home. We observed all the holidays. We went to the synagogue, not the temple. We belonged to a synagogue. But as being wholly religious, no.
But yet, when you say the value structure of your home, they're very influenced by the
very much influenced, yeah. The culture was a Jewish background, no question.
When did you happen to become interested in the profession of which you are now a part?
Well, I was always interested in business ever since I had a paper route. It made no difference in what type of business, I suppose. Whether it was relationship with the public, serving the public, or trying to have some type of a relationship in a buy-sell situation. And when the opportunity presented itself after we were married to join with her father, I became more and more interested in the challenge of doing business. It was really great.
Were you active in any Jewish youth groups when you were growing up?
When I grew up, I was a member of a Hill Foundation, which was part AZA, which is part of a B'nai B'rith for young boys and girls.
How active? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
AZA was the organization that you belong to when you're in high school. And then I became very active in Hilo at the University of Illinois. And Hilo is a young Jewish group at various universities, similar to the YCO or CYO.
How active have you been in the Jewish community here in eastern Indiana?
Not active enough.
But you do belong to...
I belong to the Bethel Temple since I lived in Winchester, Indiana.